In rock and roll, ego is the currency, pride is the whole point. So what does it take for a band to call the person they fired, the one they said they didn't need, and ask them back? You got to understand that we must remain. 10 bands found out. Some waited years, some waited decades, and at least one of them waited too long. Starting with number 10. Everybody's got the dues in life to pay. Number 10, The Who and Roger Daltrey, 1965. Here's where the whole pattern starts. November 1965. The Who are still young, still on the come-up. I Can't Explain has already hit. My Generation has just been released. They should be unstoppable. But backstage, something is cracking open. Roger Daltrey is the only one not taking drugs before shows. Pete Townsend, John Entwistle, Keith Moon, they're all on amphetamines, and what Daltrey hears on stage is unraveling him. Songs speeding up, going sloppy, losing their gravity. During a European tour, after a particularly bad night in Denmark, Daltrey finds Moon's drug stash and flushes it down the toilet. Moon comes after him with a tambourine. Daltrey punches him in the nose. It takes 5 people to pull him off. He said later it wasn't about hating Moon. It was about loving the band too much to watch it get destroyed. But Townsend and Entwistle side with Moon. Daltrey is fired, out of his own band. And then, within weeks, audiences start dropping off, fast. Because here's the thing about Roger Daltrey, that voice, that force on stage, that isn't replaceable. The Who's management, Kit Lambert and Chris Stamp, make that case to the rest of the band. They broker the conversation. Daltrey comes back. His terms, no drugs before shows. Their terms, no more fists. Both sides kept the deal. For a while. Here's what gets me about this. Everything you're about to hear, every fired frontman, every humiliating crawlback, every band that learned the hard way, follows a blueprint that was set in a dressing room in 1965. A tambourine, a punch, a week of falling box offices. The template was there from the very beginning. Number 9, Deep Purple and Ian Gillan, 1973/1984. There's the standard version of being fired and begging someone back. And then there's the Deep Purple version, which involves a decade of chaos, 3 different lineups, a complete collapse, and a singer who briefly agreed to join another legendary band while he was blacked out drunk. Ian Gillan was the voice of Deep Purple's greatest era. Smoke on the Water, Highway Star, Child in Time. If any of those are in your collection, you know exactly what this man brought to that band. But by 1973, the relentless touring schedule had cracked the chemistry. Gillan and bassist Roger Glover left. Deep Purple brought in David Coverdale and Glenn Hughes, both exceptional vocalists, and kept going. Then Ritchie Blackmore left in 1975. The band brought in Tommy Bolin, who was genuinely gifted. Deep Purple disbanded in 1976. Just done. Fast forward to 1983, Gillan's solo career had run its course. He had dinner and drinks with Tony Iommi and Geezer Butler from Black Sabbath. What happened next is remarkable. Gillan woke up the next morning to his manager calling, asking why he hadn't told anyone he'd agreed to join Black Sabbath. He had no memory of making the decision. He'd said yes to Black Sabbath while blackout drunk. He showed up at the recording studio and lived in a tent on the grounds rather than with his new bandmates. 1 year, 1 album. Then Ritchie Blackmore called. In 1984, the classic Deep Purple Mark II lineup reunited for Perfect Strangers, all 5 original members. The album reached the top 5 in the UK. Gillan didn't just crawl back to Purple. Purple crawled back to him through Blackmore's phone call, while Gillan was literally living in a tent recording for their greatest rival. And if you were seeing shows in that era, you know exactly what it sounded like when that lineup was back. Real talk, only 9% of you are subscribed. That hurts. We're spending hours digging through archives, fact-checking every detail, bringing these stories back to life. And if you're watching this far, you clearly care. So hit subscribe. It's free and takes 2 seconds. Now, to my subscribers, barely any of you have joined the membership. And honestly, that stings even more. You know the work we put in. You keep coming back. If these videos have ever made you feel something, if this music means something to you, join the membership. It's $1 coffee a month, and it's the only way we keep this going. Let's build this together. All right, back to it. Number 8, Aerosmith and Joe Perry, 1979/1984. July 28, 1979, Cleveland Municipal Stadium, the World Series of Rock, AC/DC, Journey, Ted Nugent, Thin Lizzy, and Aerosmith sharing the same festival bill, the biggest names in rock. And backstage, one of the great rock bands of that era is about to lose its lead guitarist forever, over a glass of milk. Joe Perry's wife threw it at bassist Tom Hamilton's wife during a backstage argument. The women were already fighting. When Perry and Steven Tyler got pulled in, it escalated into something no one could pull back from. Perry walked out that night. He was done. Getting clearer. You could trace it to burnout, to business frustrations, to years of the toxic twins burning both ends of every candle they owned. But the specific spark, the thing that finally blew it apart, was that glass. From fools and from sages. Aerosmith brought in Jimmy Crespo to replace Perry. Brad Whitford left in 1981 too. They got Rick Dufay. And if you've heard Rock in a Hard Place from 1982, the record Aerosmith made without either of their signature guitarists, you know what missing both of them sounds like. It's a band searching for itself in the dark. By 1984, the band was playing diminished venues on a tour that was barely moving tickets. Tyler had collapsed on stage in Portland. The wheels were off. And then backstage at one of those shows, Joe Perry appeared, the conversation happened, Brad Whitford came back too. 3 years later, Permanent Vacation. 4 years after that, Pump. And in 1986, Run DMC borrowed a riff from Walk This Way and introduced a generation who'd never heard of Aerosmith to the band that couldn't be replaced. Every time I look in. One of the greatest comebacks in rock history, triggered by a glass of milk at a Cleveland music festival. If you've ever watched something you built nearly fall apart over something ridiculous, you know exactly what kind of thing that is. Number 7, Stone Temple Pilots and Scott Weiland, 2013. This is the one on this list that doesn't have a clean ending. February 27th, 2013, Stone Temple Pilots post a single-sentence press release. Stone Temple Pilots have announced they have officially terminated Scott Weiland. That was it. Weiland found out the same way the rest of the world did, through the media. He pushed back immediately. He'd been a founding member, sung lead on every song, written the lyrics, been the face of that band for 20 years. But the DeLeo brothers had made their decision. They brought in Chester Bennington from Linkin Park, one of the genuinely great voices of his generation, as the replacement. Together they released an EP called High Rise in October 2013. Stone Temple Pilots had previously sold over 40 million albums worldwide. That EP sold 35,000 copies. I'm not going to say what that number means. You already know. Chester Bennington left in November 2015 to return to Linkin Park. and suddenly STP was without a singer again, the replacement experiment over, the path back to Weiland unclear. There was a window. Weiland died on December 3, 2015, on his tour bus in Bloomington, Minnesota. 24 days after Chester stepped away, he was 48. 2 years later, Chester Bennington was gone too. Some of y'all reading this have been sitting with these losses for a long time. And you know exactly what I mean when I say this is the entry where the title's premise breaks down. Every other band on this list eventually made the call. They crawled back in time. This one ends with a question that can't be answered. The numbers already knew. The band just didn't listen quickly enough. Number 6. Judas Priest and Rob Halford, 1992/2003. Rob Halford left Judas Priest in May 1992. The official version involved wanting to pursue outside projects and a miscommunication with the label that spiraled into something permanent. His own account described it as a resignation letter that was leaked and taken out of context, a situation so fraught and complicated that he couldn't find a way to clarify it without making everything worse.
Golden future, I can't even stop.
And you have to understand that behind all of that, Halford was carrying something much heavier. In 1998, 6 years after leaving, he sat down for an MTV interview and became the first major heavy metal artist to publicly come out as gay. He'd been carrying that for decades, performing in full leather, building one of metal's most iconic stage presences, while never being able to say who he was off that stage. Priest needed a singer. They found one in Tim "Ripper" Owens, a kid from Akron, Ohio, who fronted a Judas Priest tribute band called British Steel. A recording reached the band. He had the range, the power, the entire thing. They hired him. A tribute band singer became the actual frontman of Judas Priest.
Breaking the law, breaking the law, breaking the law.
2 albums, Jugulator in 1997, Demolition in 2001. The band had to scale down from arenas to clubs. The hardcore fans stayed, but the numbers were speaking clearly.
Breaking the law, breaking the law. So much smaller.
Here's where it gets strange. In 2001, a film called Rockstar was released, starring Mark Wahlberg, loosely based on Owen's story about going from tribute band to the real thing. The movie came out while Ripper was still in the band. His story made it to theaters before it had a resolution. In 2003, Judas Priest reunited with Halford. He'd previously said he would never go back. He went back. Owens found out he was out of the band by fax. Number 5, Kiss and Ace Frehley, 1982/1996.
I wanna see it in your eyes.
Ace Frehley, the spaceman. If you grew up on the original Kiss, that opening lick, that presence, that sense of something genuinely otherworldly, you know what this man meant to a generation. By 1982, the tension between Ace and the rest of the band had become unsustainable. Substance issues, creative conflicts, years of output that had drained the original chemistry. He was replaced by Vinnie Vincent. Then Vinnie was fired. Mark St. John stepped in, and health problems forced him out. Bruce Kulick took the spot and held it with genuine skill. And in 1983, Kiss did the unthinkable. They took off the makeup.
Girl, you were made for me.
For 13 years, they operated without the original lineup. Multiple albums, multiple personas. And here's the honest truth. Bruce Kulick was an exceptional guitarist. If this had been any other band, what they did in that period might have been considered a reinvention. But Kiss isn't any other band. And that specific visual, sonic, emotional thing they had as 4 people that had a ceiling without Ace and Peter. In 1995, Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons brought the original 4 together for the Kiss convention. The response told them what they needed to know. In 1996, all four walked out on the Grammy stage in full original makeup and announced the reunion tour. The room erupted before they'd said a word. That reunion tour was one of the highest-grossing concerts of 1996, the year of rock reunions, the year of the Eagles, Fleetwood Mac, and Page and Plant. Kiss outsold the skeptics. And if you were at one of those shows, or if someone took you, if you remember exactly where you were standing when those pyrotechnics went off, you already know why this is on the list. Number 4, Mötley Crüe and Vince Neil, February 1992/1997. February 10th, 1992. Mötley Crüe are coming off Dr. Feelgood, one of the best-selling hard rock albums in history. They are at the commercial peak, and they fire Vince Neil. It was a combination of genuine tension, creative frustration, and the grinding sense that the glam era was giving way to something they didn't want to follow Neil into. They brought in John Corabi from a band called The Scream, and Corabi, to his credit, was genuinely brilliant. The 1994 self-titled Mötley Crüe record he made with them is darker, heavier, and more musically daring than anything the band had done. Critics who dig it now call it underrated, maybe even their most interesting work. But the market didn't want interesting, it wanted Vince Neil. Here's the moment that told them everything. Before a show in Tucson, a venue that held 15,000 people, 4,000 tickets had sold. Nikki Sixx called a local radio station and offered free entry to anyone who showed up. 2 people came. Not 2,000, 2 people. That's the number. That's when Sixx knew, when John Corabi himself knew. In fact, Corabi suggested to the band that they bring Vince Neil back, which led directly to his own firing. He talked himself right out of a job trying to do the right thing. By 1997, Neil was back. Generation Swine debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200, proof that the name still moved the needle. Even Vince Neil later admitted he hated the album. Even the reunion didn't produce the comeback they'd imagined. But without Neil, they couldn't even give the tickets away. Number 3, Guns N' Roses and Slash, 1996/2016. When Slash left Guns N' Roses in the mid-90s and Duff McKagan and Izzy Stradlin had already been gone for years, Axl Rose held on to the name and kept building something. New lineup, new direction.
Welcome to the jungle. We got fun and games.
And what came out of that eventually was Chinese Democracy, a record that reportedly took 15 years and $14 million to make. It finally appeared in 2008. It wasn't bad, genuinely, but it wasn't Appetite for Destruction, and everyone knew it. In 2012, a camera caught Axl outside a hotel. A reporter asked about a reunion. Axl got into a car and said 3 words, "Not in this lifetime." In 2016, Guns N' Roses announced the Not in This Lifetime tour. They named it after those exact 3 words. The first warm-up show was at the Troubadour in Los Angeles on April 1st, April Fool's Day. That night, Axl broke his foot falling off a stage monitor. He finished the set. For the early stadium shows, he performed from a custom throne that Dave Grohl, who'd broken his own leg on stage the previous year, had given him. You can't write that. The tour ran 3 years, 175 shows, 42 countries, $500 million grossed, one of the highest-earning rock tours in history. I'd argue that Not in This Lifetime is the single best act of self-awareness any of these bands showed in the crawlback. Axl Rose took the phrase he'd used to dismiss the very idea, turned it into the title of the whole thing, and let the tour itself be the answer. The insult became the legacy. Some people say they sold out. Others say they grew up. You probably know which side you're on.
Welcome to the jungle. We got fun and games.
Number 2. Black Sabbath and Ozzy Osbourne, April 27, 1979 / July 5, 2025. April 27, 1979, a rented house in Bel Air, Los Angeles. Black Sabbath is trying to write an album. Ozzy Osbourne has been disappearing for weeks. Bill Ward, Ozzy's closest friend in the band, is chosen to deliver the message. Ward finds him and says the words, Ozzy later said he was loaded when he got the news. He added that he'd been loaded all the time by then. His larger point was fair. Every member of Black Sabbath had serious substance issues in 1979, but Ozzy was the one who got the call. Tony Iommi would say later, the only 2 options were fire him or break the band apart. After 3 months locked in a hotel room, convinced his career was over, Ozzy met Sharon Arden, who became Sharon Osbourne, who became his manager, his anchor, the architect of one of the most extraordinary solo comebacks in music history. Blizzard of Oz came out in 1980. Randy Rhoads played guitar on it. Here's the thing that still gets me. Tony Iommi was the one who reached out to find Ozzy's replacement, Ronnie James Dio, and he did it through Sharon Arden. The woman Iommi used to source the singer who would replace Ozzy became the woman who saved Ozzy's life and rebuilt his career. She was on both sides of the equation without either side fully knowing it. Black Sabbath went through Dio, who was genuinely brilliant, then Ian Gillan, Glenn Hughes, multiple albums with Tony Martin, Dio again, and through all of it, Ozzy's solo catalog was building into something massive. The original lineup recorded 13 in 2013, the first Ozzy-fronted Black Sabbath studio album in 35 years. The In Tour in 2016 and 2017 was supposed to be the farewell. Tony Iommi was battling lymphoma during parts of it. On July 5, 2025, all 4 original members performed together at Villa Park in Birmingham, the city where they'd started. Ozzy performed seated on a throne. Parkinson's disease had taken his ability to walk, but he was there. Over 40,000 people were there with him. He died 17 days later. Number 1. Van Halen and David Lee Roth, 1985/2007. Early 1985. Van Halen and David Lee Roth. Finished. The split was contentious and disputed, and the exact nature of it depends on who's telling the story. What isn't disputed is what came after. Sammy Hagar stepped in, and Van Halen with Hagar was, commercially and artistically, a serious thing. 550 OU 812 for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, Balance, massive records. The Hagar era sold out arenas for more than a decade. This wasn't a band treading water. This was a band still operating near the top. Then 1996, Van Halen and Hagar fall out. And here's where things get spectacular. Van Halen brings DLR back to record 2 tracks for a greatest hits compilation. And on September 4th, 1996, all 4 original members walk out onto the stage of the MTV Video Music Awards at Radio City Music Hall. the crowd goes nuclear. You can feel it on any recording of that moment, because everyone in that room thinks they're watching the comeback announcement of the decade. Roth goes off the teleprompter. He's doing what DLR does, working the room, filling every inch of the moment. Eddie physically pulls him away from the microphone. The backstage press conference turns into a disaster. And then the real story comes out. Van Halen had already secretly hired Gary Cherone of Extreme as their next singer, before the VMAs appearance. The reunion at Radio City was a promotional moment for a greatest hits record, while the band had already moved on to a third vocalist. Roth found out about Cherone through the press. Gary Cherone was talented. Van Halen III in 1998 showed that. It also showed what happened when you tried to manufacture chemistry that had to exist between specific people in a specific way. In 2004, a Hagar reunion tour happened, with Eddie reportedly in difficult shape during parts of it. And then in 2007, Eddie made the call that the 1996 VMAs were supposed to represent, but didn't. He called DLR. For real this time. The tour was one of the highest grossing of that year. A different kind of truth followed in 2012. The final chapter got written the right way. Eddie Van Halen died on October 6, 2020. Here's what stays with me. In 1996, when those four walked out at Radio City and the crowd lost its mind, they already knew. Every single person in that building knew. The chemistry that existed between those people and the music they'd made together was undeniable from the second they shared a stage. It just took another 11 years to stop fighting about it and let that be true. Van Halen and David Lee Roth, #1 on a list like this, and it isn't particularly close.